All right. Hello, everybody. Happy New Year, and welcome to today's webinar, Breaking Habits. Before we get started, just the normal items to take care of. We will have time for some questions at the end of the presentation, and you can type those into the question box in the lower portion of your control panel. We will also be posting a recording of the webinar on our blog. The link will be shown at the end as well. And if you would like a PDF copy of the presentation today, there will be a link to download that on the same post as the recording. And if your question does not get answered today, please email our support inbox, which will be shown at the end as well. Okay, today I want to chat about habits. I know many of you have created New Year's resolutions, which is fantastic. We will talk about how to create good habits to achieve those goals, but also I want to put a focus on breaking those current bad habits to make room for those new good ones. We will talk about what causes bad habits and then how to go about breaking that bad cycle and creating a new positive cycle of healthy things. So let's start at the beginning. What causes your brain to create a habit, either a good one or a bad one? The book, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, talks about what is called the habit loop. The habit loop consists of a cue, the routine, and a reward. I put some other common words that they use as well, with trigger and action, just so you kind of know they can use those interchangeably as well. To keep it very simple, the cue is the trigger for an action. It can be a time of day, a certain meal, a person, an environmental factor, a point of your commute, a stressful situation. It can really be anything. So you have this cue, and your brain has been trained to complete a certain action when this cue happens. We create that connection in the brain by getting a specific reward when we do the action. It can be a release of hormones from our body or any sort of reaction that the brain considers positive. Now, those rewards can last long after the action is done, which can cause our cause our body to start to create those cravings, which again, that's another cue for that specific behavior, hence the cycle, the loop, the never-ending thing that we can get stuck in. We create the cues, and our brain determines that we have done the action and received the reward enough times to switch it over basically to autopilot, which means we pretty much need zero brain activity to do whatever it is when we get the cue. This is where we get into trouble with those bad habits. I've heard plenty of times someone who is trying to quit smoking or stop eating sweets from work, the work candy dish, doesn't even realize it is happening until after the cigarette or candy is already in their mouth. Our brain is working against us because of its ability to make itself more efficient and wanting to automate as many decisions as possible so it can focus on any new or different information coming in and what it considers more important things. Especially when it's pleasurable to us in the moment, why wouldn't our brain decide that we should keep doing this and not really need to think twice, right? These automations in our brain are actually a pretty helpful thing overall. If we didn't have this, we would have to consciously think about every decision we made, which is pretty much infinite if you think about things like moving, breathing, etc. But when those decisions that are automatic are not good for our health, we need to stop that cycle, right? Another note to make here, and one that is very important for you to remember right from the beginning, and one that I hope makes a little more sense now that I have explained the habit loop, is that it's not lack of willpower that causes us to have bad habits. Please remember this. It's not lack of willpower. So many of you tell us coaches that you can't change because you just don't have the strength or you just don't have the willpower to do it. No, it's a complex system in your brain that's causing you to have those bad habits. Yes, you did it a few times to create the habit, but your brain, again, it's working against you, so it's not your willpower. If you change your perspective and change your way of thinking, you will be successful. But you have to start by not continuing to put that blame on yourself and your perceived lack of willpower. Deal? Okay, hopefully you all said deal, so let's move on. Two big factors in creating a bad habit that we can pinpoint include stress and boredom. Now, there are many other factors as well, of course, but I want to highlight these just as a starting point to finding your own triggers. Think about it. Stress causes us to do things ranging from overeating to smoking and many other self-destructive habits. Boredom is a killer as well. If you're sitting at home or at work and are bored, how easy is it to reach for the snacks or waste hours on social media? I just want to mention these now because, again, it's not about willpower and you just powering through to break a habit. I want to get your brain started in thinking about how these factors and other factors affect your habits. And as we dig deeper, you can find how they may lead to other triggers as well. So just get our brains on that wavelength here. Okay, so we can probably all come up with a few bad habits that we want to break this year. So let's get to the tips on how you can get on the path to success. So now we know that how the habit loop works and how it creates those habits, good or bad, right? Ultimately, we have to create a new positive habit loop to replace that old bad one. That's what we have to do. New cues lead to different actions that can give us a similar or better in the long run reward. Okay, great. But where do we start? We start with awareness. You have to figure out what the cues or triggers are to your bad habits. The trigger is where it begins, so it makes sense that if we alter the trigger, we alter our actions. I know it's not as simple as this, but it's a great place to start. Some of the triggers are easy to recognize, some not so much. So I want to give you a few questions to get you started. When you're doing your bad habit, think of all the different triggers there are, and think of these questions. First, where are you? Your physical environment is very important in shaping habits and behavior. Are you always eating that candy at your desk or buying that specific treat at one stop in your truck route? Are you playing on your phone every night on your couch after supper? Next, who are you with? Social environments are very strong as well. Do you go out to lunch with the same coworker every day who likes the all-you-can-eat buffet? Or maybe you are that coworker? Do you make treats with the same person every weekend? I'm not saying that you have to make all new friends or get a new office best friend or anything like that. But again, we need to create that awareness to stop our bad habits, and we can maybe help our friends and coworkers do the same thing. Do you practice your worst habits when you are by yourself? Do you take advantage of being alone to choose what you want to watch on TV, to binge for hours on end? Yeah, me too sometimes. So paying attention to who you're with, if anyone, is important to think about as well when we're talking about triggers. Next, let's talk about feelings, physical, mental, emotional. The way you feel absolutely is a cue to complete certain actions. How about when you feel tired? You may reach for a quick fix with that soda or that sugary treat. How about bored? We already talked about this. If we're bored, wasting time online or grabbing snackies is extremely common. And if you're stressed or sad, yeah, we don't always make great decisions when we are either of those. You may not want to go for that walk if you aren't feeling good physically, mentally, or emotionally, right? Even if we know it will make us feel better, it's still hard to do. So that's a big trigger too. So think about those. Next, what just happened right before you did your habit? These are some of the more obvious cues, other actions. Do you have a donut after you pour yourself a cup of coffee? Do you always have a glass of wine or a beer right when you get home from work? Do you have a stash of candy for when you have an argument with your spouse or significant other? This can be tied into those other questions that we've already asked ourselves as well, and this question can kind of tie everything together. Think about those other actions that lead to your habits. It could be a big string of actions that's a trigger. This happens, and this happens, and I do this, and then this happens. So you have to kind of put the puzzle together for yourself to get started. And then last question to consider, what time is it? Most people do habits at similar times. Do you have snack breaks at a certain time at work? Do you always go out to eat on Fridays? Do you have your sugary soda at 2 o'clock every afternoon? Time cues are very common and something that if you're aware of can absolutely be changed. Okay, so here are some things to think about when you're trying to simply be aware of those triggers and habits and how that loop is working for you. This is step number one, and it's one that you need to do thoroughly because again, that if you don't know what your trigger is, how are you going to go about changing it, right? An interesting side note about finding those cues and focusing on those and the rewards that come with the habits and actions that we do is that this is the foundation of one of the most successful organizations for quitting a bad habit, Alcoholics Anonymous. We're going to touch on the strategies in more detail here in just a minute, but what AA does is it forces people to identify their cues and the rewards of drinking. It then helps them find new behaviors to replace those old ones. This simple idea has helped countless people change their bad habits that they and their loved ones thought they maybe couldn't break. So again, we're going to take that concept and we're going to add some more ideas for other habits and things that you guys want to break today. Okay, so now that we know some of our triggers after you've done this step, the next step is replacing or eliminating as many triggers as you can. So let's take a minute and be real here. Habits are there for a reason. There is some sort of benefit. We get some sort of reward, whether they are good or bad habits. So don't think this is going to be easy and finding a new habit and then you're done, right? That's not going to happen. I wish that was, for all of our sakes, was true, but it takes time. Replacing a habit is the same as creating the original habit in the first place. And contrary to popular belief, it does usually take longer than 21 days to create a habit. A 2010 study in the European Journal of Social Psychology found that it took an average of 66 days for a behavior to change, and that time varied anywhere from 18 days to 254 days, depending on the habit. So I say this because I want you to be patient with yourself, and we're going to talk about ways to get you through those hard days too, so stick with me. So let's get started, but again, we just want you to have that mindset going in. It takes time to create a habit. It takes time to break a habit, so be patient with yourself. So let's get started with some tips to break that bad habit and create a new one. All right, so right now, actually, sorry, went too fast here. All right, so we're cutting or replacing as many triggers as we can. Right now, your environment is making it harder to practice good habits, right? So you can take some time, go through those triggers we just talked about, and decide which ones can be changed and which ones cannot be changed. If you eat any treats that are in your house, then the goal, you can change, I know it's hard, but try not to have them around as much as possible. If you always stop at a specific convenience store for a soda, a can of chew, whatever it is, go a different route home. You can't stop going to work, but you can start bringing your own snacks from home so that you don't have to go to the vending machine and get tempted by all the bad options. Like I said, you can't remove all of your cues, so you have to do your best to add in different cues that can become stronger than the original, that trigger to make that positive action rather than the negative. More examples. If you go home, usually grab the remote and sit on the couch, put your workout clothes on top of your remote to cue you to go for a walk instead, or jump on your treadmill, whatever you've got at home. Make a list of all the different things you can do rather than the bad habit that you have. For example, if you want to go on Facebook, you have to do 5 minutes of body weight exercises first. When you get stressed at work and want to smoke or grab something from the vending machine, practice box breathing instead. Inhale for a count of 4, hold your breath for a count of 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4, and repeat as needed. That is a simple stress reduction, stress management tool that you can include. Think outside the box. There's so many different options out there. Be creative and you're gonna find what works for you. That's huge. That right there, eliminate and replace. We know we can't change everything, but we can adapt and we can move things around and change as much as we possibly can and find different cues that are stronger, like I said. Next step, ask for help. Accountability is such a huge part of succeeding with any sort of goal. Knowing that someone is going to check in on you and ask you how you're doing with your goal is a very powerful motivator. It's a huge aspect of health coaching. We see it work every single day here at Health Check. We talked about Alcoholics Anonymous already, and a big part of that program is having a sponsor. With this program, a sponsor is typically someone who has already gone through what you're working through right now. Now, you may not be able to find someone who has been through exactly what you want to accomplish, but you absolutely can find someone who truly wants you to succeed and will be there to support you. Some of us don't want to tell others about a habit we're trying to break because what if they see us fail, right? It's safer if nobody knows. No one can know that you fail. Sure, but it's also a lot easier to let yourself off the hook, right? We need that accountability. If you find someone who will support you, even if you fail the first time, or the second, or the third, they will become someone that you can turn to for ideas, for motivation, for support, and someone to celebrate your success when you finally achieve that goal. On a similar note, try to surround yourself with people who already live the way you want to. I know being around health coaches all day is a great motivator for me to stay healthy. Find a coworker who is running that 5K you want to train for. Go out with the friends who go to a movie instead of go out to a bar. You don't have to stop hanging out with all of your friends, but getting out of the atmosphere more often, changing up those routines can be very, very helpful when you're trying to break a habit. Now the next slide. Visualize your success. Seriously, visualization works. Pro athletes do it all the time. Sit calmly, think about yourself doing a workout tomorrow morning. Think about what you're going to do, what workout clothes you're going to wear, what time you're going to get up, The more details, the better. And think about all the positive feelings you're going to have when you're doing it and when you're done. When we start to create positive feelings with some action, our brain is going to anticipate that action in a positive way, even if you haven't done it yet. There's studies that prove this. The mind is a powerful thing, so use it to your advantage. Just like that cat up there, visualize your inner lion. It works. Try it. And then speaking of visualizing positive feelings, let's talk about overcoming negative self-talk. We are very good at beating ourselves up when we are struggling. We don't even realize how hard we are on ourselves most of the time. So we need to start practicing being more positive with our inner dialogue. Here's one way to start overcoming your negative self-talk. Use the word but. Every time you catch yourself saying something negative about yourself, add the word but, and then finish the sentence with something positive. For example, I ate like junk today and I feel so bad. But once I get myself into a better routine, I'm going to feel fantastic. Or I don't want to get up in the morning and do that workout. But think of all the energy I'm going to have after I'm done. Adding that one word triggers you to spin that negative sentence into a positive one. And as you do it more, ideally, you'll get to the point where you prevent that negative thought in the first place most of the time, creating a much better mindset overall. Give it a try. I promise, again, small action, that's your cue. That word but is the cue to that positive change of mindset. Try it. You'll see how effective it can be. Last tip for this section, plan for failure. I know we all want to be perfect right from the beginning. We want to have our results and outcomes right away. That's what we've become conditioned to expect these days. But you have to realize you aren't always going to have a perfect day. Life is going to get in your way. Life is going to throw you curveballs. So you need to plan for that now. What are you going to do when you have that bad day and you eat that candy bar? Are you going to say, well, today's ruined, let's just go crazy? Unfortunately, this is the path many of us choose, right? But if you have a plan in place for those bad days, you can overcome this mentality. You can have a list of actions to make you feel better after a slip up. It can be talking to that support person. It can be having a backup day for exercise in case something comes up on your normal days. Again, the list is endless, and you need to create this with your own life in mind. A lot of times this plan is as simple as reminding yourself of the bigger picture. If you have a progress versus perfection outlook going into any goal, you can step back and look at the big picture. If you have one bad day, compare that to what you would have done before you started working on your goals. Is it still better? Most likely it is. You didn't get to where you are now in one day, so you aren't going to get to your best self in one day either. One bad day doesn't take away all of your good days. I'm going to pull out a quote from way, way back. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit." How perfect is that quote for what we're talking about today? One day, one act is a fantastic start, but we need to create a habit to get where we want to go. And creating habits takes time, as I said, and failure is a way to learn how we can best stay on track for the long run. As our coach Ashley would say, FAIL stands for first attempt in learning. Take each speed bump and learn for next time. Have that positive attitude. Okay, I came across these next tips when I was doing some research to see if I could find a new way to think about breaking and making habits. And I honestly think it can be very successful as a strategy for a lot of us. Think about how our emotions play a role in our habits. We've already talked about it with triggers. It's a pretty big part, those emotions. But what if we use other emotions to fight those emotions that can throw us off track? Here's how. First, gratitude. Gratitude is a pretty amazing thing. We have talked about it in past webinars numerous times. When we are grateful, we tend to be more positive in general, and we also tend to make better choices with our health. When we are grateful, we typically have a more positive outlook, which leads to more motivation to be better, right? Let me give you some evidence of that. A study cited in the book Emotional Success by David DeSteno stated that people who experienced 33% more gratitude than their average peer in a 3-week period doubled their financial self-control. Other studies showed that using gratitude showed more success with goals like using less tobacco, alcohol, and eating better, exercise. Sounds like exactly what most of us are trying to accomplish, right? Another study in a book by psychologists from the University of Toronto showed that gratitude doesn't work by strengthening willpower or some sort of brain function to distract us from our temptations. It actually makes our future goal more attractive, which makes that reward part of the habit loop bigger, making it easier to make better decisions. I really like how the author describes it. He uses the term future you and how being grateful will help the future you. I will use this again here in a minute. So how do we increase our gratitude, first of all? Well, we recognize the good things that happen to us and actually take the time to acknowledge them. Instead of taking for granted all the good things that happen to us every single day, tiny little things that we take for granted now, like waking up, for example, track those good things that happen to you. I would love for you all to have a gratitude journal to write down a few good things each and every day, or maybe just weekly or a couple days a week, whatever's realistic for you. Or if it's not realistic to write it down, at least take some time either on your commute to work, maybe in the shower, or some time that is just consistent every day or every few days to think about the good things in your life. It also helps when things go wrong. If something bad happens, if we're struggling with our goal, having a grateful outlook can give you perspective, and you can realize that things could be worse and you can make it through those bad times. You can make it through the struggles when you're creating your new habit. Be grateful leads to more positive attitude. Okay, next emotion, compassion. Compassion can help us support others, right? We go out of our way to help out those in need. What we need to do is have a little compassion for ourselves. Just like I talked about positive self-talk, having compassion with ourselves can help us when we're struggling to create a new goal. That future you term I mentioned earlier, this is the person you can be compassionate towards. Another study in emotional success found that students that had compassion with themselves when they had a not so good performance went on to increase their studying by 30%. So how do you increase your compassion towards yourself? That positive self-talk can help, and a little exercise that involves writing a letter to your own future self, that future you. Here's what you say. You have to explain to the future you why you are doing the bad habits that you're doing. Why are you drinking 3 sodas every day when you know the future you could be dealing with prediabetes, weight gain, mood swings, all those other things that come with having too much sugar? How would you explain that decision to the future you? When you think about what you could have to be dealing with in the future, you will start to feel compassion for that person, yourself in this example, hopefully anyways. And that can be a great motivator to make the change so you don't have to have that uncomfortable discussion with, well, yourself. We all hate regret, right? This is a way to avoid it altogether by thinking ahead, thinking about that future you, and then acting on it now. Last emotion that can help break habits, pride. Pride can be a positive or negative emotion. It is one of the 7 deadly sins. The pride we are talking about here is what the author calls authentic pride. Think about how you feel when you have a great day and you stay on track with your goals. Feels great, right? Of course it does. Studies show that having pride can help increase motivation and diligence in keeping with our goals. It can also boost self-control, meaning that it will help you stay on track because you will feel more capable of achieving your goals and sticking with the positive actions. Think about some bad habits that you do sitting in front of you. That piece of candy, that soda, cigarette, sitting right in front of you physically. Now, focus on the pride you will feel when you walk away, when you get up and walk away and don't have it. If you do this, studies show that you have more of a chance of actually doing it in real life. Also, even if you do end up indulging, chances are you will eat less if it's food, for example, because you're still focused on that pride and that good feeling. That's how this study showed. If you focus on that pride, even if you do partake, it's still going to be less. You're still going to have a positive way to do it. You're still going to have a step in the right direction. So let's talk tracking again. Maybe in that same gratitude journal, jot down when you feel pride for either completing a positive action or not completing that negative action. Feel that pride as you're able to write down more and more good habits. All right, let's do a quick summary here and then we'll get to some questions. Our brain creates habit loops that are hard to break, but we can absolutely do it. Figure out your triggers, do your best to eliminate and replace those cues. This means changing routines, surrounding yourself with positive influences, and using your own emotions to help you stay strong in your journey. Ask for support, visualize your success, and go for it. I'm going to include a worksheet from the creator of the Habit Loop on the blog post for this webinar as well, which will be up by tomorrow at the latest. It's a great visual and easy way to get started with breaking that cycle and creating a new one. A couple other thoughts. Start small with changes. Don't overwhelm yourself. Small changes are absolutely the best way to make long-lasting success. Also, keep stress management in the forefront of your thoughts. Stressful times are when we are at our weakest. Take a moment, look at our meditation and stress blog posts, and then help get to that point where you can handle your stress better, which will make it easier to break and make new habits all year long. All right, that's it for today. Upcoming webinars, Heart Health next month. February is a month of love, so heart, let's take care of it. And then March, this is where we need your input. We're going to do hot topics. We want to hear from you. What recent health trends or exercises are you wondering about? We're going to put some stuff on our social media, but also I'm going to put our email address up there. So if you have specific questions on any health-related topic, let us know and we'll include it in that Hot Topics webinar in a couple months. And here's how you contact us. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. That blog, that's where the webinar will be posted along with that worksheet by the end of tomorrow. We're on Instagram, and then you can call us or email us. healthcoach@healthcheck360.com is where I want you to send any questions that don't get answered today and any topics you want for that March webinar. And with that, let's get to some questions.